Good afternoon and welcome to the May 22nd, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. My name is Steve Brandt and I'm the president of the BET. At this time I'll ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify the presence of a quorum.
Commissioner Fry is absent. Commissioner Bene.
Present.
Commissioner Payne.
Present.
Commissioner Chuktai.
Present.
Vice President Priest-Stinson.
Present.
President Brandt.
Here.
There are 5 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. As is traditional, I want to begin the meeting with an acknowledgement that we're meeting today on Dakota homeland. I've been reading up a little bit about the land acknowledgements, and one of the points that often gets made is that words are one thing, actions are another, and I'd like to give a shout out to an organization that I think has put that into practice here in Minneapolis. An opportunity on Sunday to do a 5K race. It was sponsored by Owamini Yomini Okodeyapi, and not only did they, in the course of 10 years, have they transitioned from a white-initiated, white-led organization to one that now has an indigenous majority board and an indigenous executive director, but they are also doing close consultation with the 4 Dakota communities in Minnesota. And here's the shirt to prove it. All right. We'll now proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's Legislative Information Management System, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. Board members, the agenda for today's meeting is before us. I have a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
We now have a proper motion before us. Any discussion? With that, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The agenda is adopted. Next is the acceptance of minutes from the April 24, 2024 meeting. May I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved. Second.
We have a proper motion before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and the minutes are accepted as presented. Item 4 is the acceptance of public comment. The clerk informs me that we have nobody signed up for public comment today. And so I will move on to discussion item 5 on our agenda, which is a presentation of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board 20-year Neighborhood Park Plan. And we'll welcome today Superintendent Bangora, Assistant Superintendent Michael Schroeder, and Finance Director Julie Wiseman. And I should insert here that the mayor is attending a funeral and expects to be here later in the meeting. Go ahead, Superintendent.
All right. Thank you, President Brandt and Vice President Priest-Stinson. Good to see you, and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and the privilege to be here today. I've always really looked forward to this and really sharing with the board the great work that we do within the organization. I would like to start off by saying, before we get into what we're going to talk about today, just to mention that the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board ranked number 2 on the Trust for Public Lands for one of the best park systems in the country. We're right behind Washington, D.C., and unfortunately, St. Paul didn't get us this year, but we're ahead of them. But to think about the Twin Cities, both park systems always ranking, usually in the top 5. It's really exciting, but I wanted to share that with you just to say that work that we do here, this presentation really signifies the hard work and the commitment to our residents in Minneapolis on not only parks that are beautiful, but we commit to parks not only in capital. So it's one thing to walk out to a park and it uses acreage, but our acreage are well maintained and we invest heavily in them. So we're very grateful for that and very excited about that. And so I wanted to share that with our Minneapolis residents. Let me go here. And so we're going to kind of give you a review, of course, of our NPP 20 annual report. We'll have the executive summary, the history and background, the NPP 20 rehabilitation, NPP 20 capital investments, and a reference list for you to have if you have any questions, of course, further. So with that, for timing, I'm going to turn this over to Director Wiseman, who will kind of start us off and walk us through. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Good afternoon, President Brandt and Commissioners. So our 20-year neighborhood park plan is a historic agreement between the City of Minneapolis and the Minneapolis Park Board. It was originally passed in 2016 through concurrent ordinances between the City Council and our Park Board. It offers investment in our in our neighborhood parks for the next 20 years. This report today is the seventh report from the start. The beginning was 2017, and our first programming was operations and maintenance repairs. It included a $3 million property tax levy to increase our service level in our maintenance and repair areas. That has grown with the property tax increase annually. So in 2024, it is just over $4 million. You'll see in the chart that the capital is $12.2 million for 2024. It was $11.8 million in 2023, and it's broken out by capital and rehab. So again, we are required to report annually on the outcomes of the NPP 20 report. These are results through December 31st of 2023. This report includes information from 2022 through 2024. So of course, when we get to the 2024, there won't be any actuals expenses reported. It will just show the plan for 2024. Our guaranteed minimum annual amount for capital was set in 2017 at $10.5 million. In the ordinance, there are adjustments to the annual amount every 5 years. And in 2021, the City Council and Park Board adopted concurrent resolutions that set our amounts for 2022 through 2026. Our next reset of annual amounts will happen in 2025, and it will cover the years 2027 through 2031. I will now turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Michael Schroeder, who will walk you through the capital improvement program.
Thanks, Julie. So I'll walk through the capital improvement program, the rehabilitation program, and then the summaries of what we've been doing over the last several years. We use a 6-year capital improvement program, so we're programming out through a period of 6 years, and you'll see several of those years addressed here. When the NPP 20 ordinance was passed, the Park Board passed an equity ordinance that requires us to assess each of our neighborhood parks. We actually do it now for our regional parks as well, across a series of metrics that establish a way of investing that's intended to address the disparities that we've seen in investment in the past. So all of those neighborhood parks with major amenities benefit from a first round of improvements with the conclusion of NPP 20. And in fact, if we maintain the pace that we're at, we will have made it through each of the neighborhood parks probably by 2034, 2 years in advance of the end of the program. The rehabilitation program, if we look at capital programs as being wholesale reinvestments in parks, rehabilitation are those investments that we make to carry us over until the park actually receives its capital improvement. They're intended to enhance park safety, looking at codes that might have changed since the original installations. We have a giant ADA transition plan, which we try to accommodate in there, that's been largely focused on restrooms in the first several years of this. We did an analyses at the beginning of this to understand where there were failures in the system. In fact, one of the early things was finding broken roof beams at, I think it was Nokomis Recreation Center. So we've been able to identify and address those things. Even if it wasn't high on the equity metrics, we were able to go in and make the investment necessary to keep that park recreation center functional. And so as opposed to the equity metrics, the capital, which is based on equity, the rehabilitation aspects are based on need. So we, as I mentioned, we do an inventory of all the assets every year. We assess our conditions, and we are ranking them in terms of their need for rehabilitation and prioritizing them through a series of rehabilitation categories. They're listed on the left here, and this is starting in 2022, kind of the summary. And you can see that as we go through these, you'll see that accessibility improvements under the ADA have consistently received a significant amount of dollars. Because that is a need and a civil rights need that we're trying to address through all of our buildings and parks. You'll see that as we go through this, that the 2022, the dollars that we have invested have largely been consumed. When you get to operations facilities, we're actually storing up dollars so that we can make a more significant investment in an operations facility that will better serve the needs of our organization. That would be like our Southside Operations Center or one of the other major operations centers. So you can see that when we look at this, we're about 96% expended from the dollars that were directed to rehabilitation in 2022. The same categories we look at here in 2023, again, largely expended. Again, we have a low amount invested because we're storing a low amount allocated or expended in the operations facilities. But the other categories have largely been expended. And if we go to 2024, you'll see that, as Julie noted, this report is ending with December 31st, 2023. So we hadn't actually expended any 2024 dollars, but you can see the allocations that we have put in there. One of the things that's different of this page that might be subtle, on the bottom of this sheet, you see that we have introduced a new rehabilitation category and allocated $200,000 towards athletic field and diamonds rehabilitation. It was an area that was lacking in previous, and as we've been going through some studies with the community, we realized we needed to just begin allocating dollars to a new category. And that came out of the same total amount of dollars. We simply transferred some capital dollars into and created a new rehabilitation category. The capital investments are the ones that are based on the equity metrics. So every year we go through the neighborhoods and the parks and we re-rank them and then allocate funds to each of the parks that are set up. And of course, they're set up across that 6-year time horizon of our capital improvement program. And what's important around our capital improvement program is that we do intensive community engagement in the first year. We may start design and engineering towards the end of that first year. Usually it carries over into the second year, and then we're actually implementing in the third year. So if you look at 2022, we are just beginning to implement many of the projects on this list. Of the projects that have been implemented, we've expended 37%, but now as we get into the early parts of 2024, we're actually spending those dollars quickly, and these parks will be completed relatively soon. And you can see as we go through here the anticipated completion date that we would have noted. And of course, as we go through the capital, then 2023 dollars, these are the ones that are we would be in the design and engineering phase largely now. So the dollars that we've expended would be considerably less, or the percent expenditure. And as we get to 2024, you can see that the zero, we hadn't spent anything. This is the beginning of engagement for these parks in that kind of 3-year cycle towards implementation. We pulled forward some of the 20 and 21 where we still have capital investments remaining, but I think what's equally important is as we look at those after that period of 2021 and 2022, the summary on the left becomes really important, because it shows that we, in the rehabilitation categories, we have consumed a significant amount of the dollars available, and on the capital side, we are closing in on that 100% mark, and that's what's really important here. And I will stop, wait for questions, and allow my colleagues to step up as well.
Are there any questions at this point? Commissioner Priest Stinson.
Just a couple of quick questions, and I would expect that some of these things you have to get back to me. But I'm wondering, one of the points was around park safety, and I'm just curious, has there been any prioritization around the relationship building that's involved in park safety? So there's staff that, is very focused on the job at hand they were hired for, but is there regular engagement where that's somebody's job to do, to just kind of walk around a park in a busy season and, hey, how's it going? Is there any of that? Curious.
President Brandt, Vice President Priest Stinson, let me answer a part of that, and then maybe Superintendent Bangura could talk about some of the other initiatives we have around getting people out into parks. So the park safety initially started out with just a focus on lighting, kind of basic things, park security. So we have lighting around buildings and high-use areas that we've been investing in. We've also been looking at how we can do more surveillance with cameras, trying to make certain that we can track things that are going on better. Mm-hmm. But and also, when we get outside of the planning division that I'm responsible for, we get into the recreation division, and we get into the community connections and violence prevention arena, where we actually have staff who are out in parks and trying to engage with youth in some of the parks that actually have larger aggregations of kids during the day. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been significant in trying to maintain our parks as safe places. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if Superintendent Bangura would want to add anything to that.
And you may want to stay for a moment, because I have a feeling that a couple of my follow-ups you might want to still be
Sure.
standing there for.
Okay. Thank you, Vice President Priest Stinson. Thank you for the question. Yeah, I think Michael explained it well. I think one of the things that we focused on specifically around safety was the first approach to issues of like trauma or de-escalation, really community building. The change in our department, which I made in early, I think it was in 2021, we changed Community Outreach Department to Community Connections and Violence Prevention Department. The effort was to really have this team approach a lot of the things that happen within our parks and around our city directly with an engaged kind of empathy and connection certification around, like I said, trauma or de-escalation, or just having a face that's there approaching these situations first, not our police, yes, but our team of folks that not only reflect our community, mm-hmm, but folks that are really very focused on making sure that they're approaching things in a very empathetic way, right? Mm-hmm. And also then looking for resources and making sure that we're connecting with people. The Community Violence Prevention team, they're out not only if we have, let's say, a situation at a water park, mm-hmm, where we have sometimes maybe some activation, kids are really just acting out. The mm-hmm team is deployed to that particular area. They be in that area. They get to know the kids. They talk to the parents. It's more of a connection that's very different, so that the staff that are there, whether lifeguards or staff, are doing their job. But this team is there specifically to really engage. They're out in sometimes even North Minneapolis and between North Commons and North High School. Mm-hmm. They make sure that they're connecting the students that are coming from North High, come over to the park, so they're in those spaces. There's times where the team might be sitting at every neighborhood association meetings, mm-hmm, to where you know the face of the people that are from the park board that are sitting in the room even during times where things are not necessarily intense, but they're there in those rooms so that the people know who they are. So when they respond, they will say, yes, let me talk to Director Vincent or Abdi, action team. He's on our action team. So a lot of the work that we do within our park system is with this team, working with our police, working with our community. We have some really good examples which I can share with you, not for today, but I can share with you, for example, Loring Park, which was one of the highest area of crime. Mm-hmm. Everybody assumed it was in North Minneapolis area, but it wasn't. It was Loring Park. It was the assumption that was made. We shared through data, and we said we need to do something and activate this space. Stevens Square is another one, too, which was a very active place. So we engaged community, we engaged businesses, we engaged residents, we engaged resources, and so that team really worked hard at meeting in community and bringing together all sorts of all resources. So it's not solved by just the park system, but it's solved by community. And I can give many examples how that changed the numbers dramatically. In fact, Loring Park completely dropped off the top list because of that activation. A lot of that model is happening throughout our park system. A lot of it is done by this Community Connections Violence Prevention team that are out in our parks, engaging community in a very collaborative way and a very connected way.
And the violence prevention is on staff and not contractors.
Correct.
And
They're on
I just
staff.
want to applaud that.
Yeah.
I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So thanks for clarifying that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Also, real quick, just on the point of kind of less about cameras, but I'm just curious, what is the policy of working with other agencies in the park? So like, for example, if an ICE van was driving around and wanted access to camera footage, is that something that we would cooperate with?
I would probably have to get back to that because I think Chief Ojado might have a more direct answer to that, because I know that there's going to be, I'm sure that there's legal issues behind that and stuff, but I don't know specifically around that. But I know we work closely with, of course, with the city.
Yes.
I don't know specifically that, but I can get back to you on that if that is a specific question.
That would be great.
Yeah.
The context for that is
Yeah.
just understanding and knowing that, you know, when we sign for bonding dollars and the way it trickles down, what are the ways in which it's used at like that very micro level
Sure.
is important in my decision making, and I think helpful for others too.
That's a good question, and I will definitely get back to you on that.
Thank you. And then two other quick things around parking fines as a revenue source. I'm curious, what is the percentage of revenue that comes from parking fines across all parks? And is there any data that's available that disaggregates the neighborhoods or the park specific for the fines? And does it go as far as race? Just curious.
Yes, Dr. Weissman, I think answer a little quicker than I can.
President Brandt and Vice President Priestinson, we collect approximately $200,000 to $300,000 in fines. That's parking fines and speeding tickets, though, you know, so it's not just parking.
Okay.
We collect parking fees in our regional park system. So there isn't anything in our neighborhood parks. And Chief Ojado would have to answer the question about how detailed the records are kept and what information is on those records.
Okay, fantastic. And then last question is around prioritizing improvements. Like I know we were doing tennis courts, I can't remember exactly where. How do we, or how do you evaluate like the use? So how do you determine, like, you know, weather is obviously a factor, but like popularity of sports and like that type of thing, how do you kind of, what's the process behind that? And you can give me the abridged and send me more info later. I'm not trying to get that dug into it, but I'm just curious.
President Brandt and Vice President Priestinson and Commissioners, right now we're fortunate to have a long-range plan set for all of our service areas that includes a long-range plan for each of our particular parks. When we get to the point of expending capital dollars in that park, we re-engage with the community and have an opportunity to refine the directions of the long-range plan. And sometimes it tells us that what we were looking at was not the right way to go. And maybe the best example that I could point to early, other of you might have other recollections, but I think in Peavy Park we had tried to show a different configuration of basketball, and it was really important in the first phase that they had full court basketball. I played basketball growing up, and I completely understand why. So we reorchestrated how that park would work. If we were to go in other parks where we're redoing tennis courts, oftentimes like the need for striping for pickleball or even the addition of pickleball as a separate court becomes important. So the focus when we get to that second round of engagement is making certain that we can refine the engagement that was done to create the long-range plan to make certain that it's addressing the needs of the community when we get to the capital expenditures.
And then one other quick follow-up, apologize to my colleagues, but how do you determine like good faith effort and engagement? Because as we know, time of day, there's a lot of factors to who shows up, and you know, it's just a fact. what do we consider to be a good faith effort to getting the diversity needed in this engagement? Is it just online because I know we do the meetings, and I've taken many a survey, which is great, but do we do any like engagement work around survey work where parks are like very active and activated to pick up some of those folks that just wouldn't be able to make it to a meeting because of, all the things?
President Brand, Vice President Stinson, Pre-Stinson, Commissioners, that is a really excellent question. We pride ourselves on the engagement that we do. It's not perfect. Mm-hmm. We start out with what we call a community engagement assessment, where we look at all the potential stakeholders and users and try to assess how we best reach out to each one of them. We set targets for those engagement levels, and if we move through the process and haven't reached those target levels, we go back and we redo more engagement so that we can be certain that we're coming as close to those targets as we can.
Okay.
And we use, frankly, a lot of different methods, including the meetings, which tend to be really the focus. We do online engagement. We'll send people out in parks. We actually do a fair amount of working with what we call community connectors, mm-hmm. where we hire people in the community to reach out to people in their community through different ways, whether it be a pizza and movie night, or I can't even think of all. We had dancers at bus stops, and we had all of them oriented to try to find ways to engage people that wouldn't normally come into the process. And I'll tell you that it's not perfect, but I would hold our engagement process up against any entity you could come across in the public realm.
I love it, and thank you. I'll probably send a follow-up email with just other things that come up, or we'll be here all day in parks. Thank you so much for entertaining my questions. Very helpful.
Let the record reflect that the mayor has joined the meeting, although I think he stepped out briefly. Commissioner Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I was curious how this body can help support youth programming. I see, a lot of what the 20-year plan is much more focused on capital improvement, but I'm really interested in supporting youth programming, and I just want to make sure that whether it's this body or my role as a council member, how we can best support that.
Thank you, Commissioner Payne. It's a great question. So it's a long answer for probably, but I'll be short. So I think like anything, we always our organization and the park system is really based on property taxes, as you know. That is the one thing that we have. 80% of it is what operates our staff and to provide the services for our youth. I will say, and I'm very proud of the fact that the city council, working with the mayor, supported the $2.6 million in perpetuity through taxes in our general fund that is supporting really a wonderful group of folks that we've hired that are doing Spark Studios, that are doing program leads, and really incredible innovative programs from drone flying to they're building what they call those carts, those soapbox carts, like just really interesting things that are happening. We also have 2 naturalists that are working within parks, so they're doing more and more programs around youth and engaging youth where they are today. So that's been very helpful. But like anything, I think when we always look for support, it really comes down to our property tax. When we come and we negotiate, we work with the mayor before we come to this body. We obviously have needs that we need for our system, current service levels. We're not coming with things that are just actually fluff or extra. It's really things that are very important that the city is also dealing with, whether it's inflation or if it's dealing with wage, or it's dealing with what we call system equity investment, which is, for example, how we have Graco Park being built, how we have our harbor terminal, how we have, even when we're doing waterworks, we have to put staff and infrastructure into those places, whereas in operations, whether it's in programming, whether it's in safety, so there's a different variety of things that we need and support for a system that's meeting the needs of our city. As we know we have the North Loop Park, for example. So as we are meeting the needs of the city to put parks and recreation spaces in, that's important. We also then have to look on the back end of it, which we have to put the actual infrastructure of people into those spaces. And again, if our property tax really supports 80% of that, and then staffing is well over 70%, that's the really important piece of it. So I just want to share that with you, that is what we're asking and what we need to help support one of the best park systems in the country that are doing some incredible work out there in our parks. And so that's probably a long answer today. Okay.
No, I really appreciate that because, we just recently, headlines that there's a $20 million deficit in the city budget. That means we either have to cut spending or raise taxes. It's a simple math question, but that simple math question has a set of principles and values embedded in it. And I think that we need to think really critically around the importance of youth programming and how our parks can help support this primary, secondary, tertiary effects that improve our city. And that means we need to make those investments. And so one of the conversations I'm trying to have amongst my colleagues on city council is that as we're looking at potentially some particularly hard choices going forward, we need to have our priorities in order, and youth programming is one of my priorities. So however we can support each other in that, let's do that.
And thank you, and I really appreciate that, Commissioner Payne, because I think that one of the most important things that we talk about is not necessarily prevention, we talk about intervention. The park system is phenomenal at that and bringing our youth into our centers, but we have to have the right people in place, we have to have the programs in place, and with that, of course, there's a cost. And so we do an amazing job with our Teen Teamworks program. We hire a tremendous amount of young people every year that come into our park system and do really wonderful work. So we look at the park system as really the lever that's pulled working with the city and the park system to really impact the lives of our young people and to change their lives and to save lives. And so we never take our eye off of that. It is a important focus for me in my role because our young people are looking for things to do and we're trying to capture them. And I've always made a story where I say when they walk into a building and we greet those young people and we say, you know, hey, what are you doing today? And that young child says, nothing, well, come do it with me. The same thing is happening out on the street. The same thing that child can go to and get engaged somewhere else. So it's important that our centers are vibrant and that they're funded so we can take care of our young people and really transform lives. So, and I can love to share more with you on that, but I appreciate your support and your focus on that because that's a very primary thing for us.
Commissioner Benny, do you have a question? Okay. Commissioner Priest Stinson.
I was just going to say on that note, really appreciate what Council President Payne was saying, and also I think youth jobs kind of comes with that. And when I think about engagement of youth, who better to engage youth than youth? And so I think that should be part of it. And also as part of an additional context to what Council President Payne was saying, I think it is very relevant to think about the budget of Minneapolis Public Schools and the state that it's in. And there's a lot of cuts being made to programming. And so not only do we need it, period, and should, that is also a factor. Whether we have a financial responsibility or not, I think we just have a human obligation to make sure our youth are good. And I know my son is always at the rec doing basketball, and when he doesn't have anything to do, my answer is you better go to the rec center. Go see what's popping at the rec center. And so it does a lot for morale, and it does a lot for children that may not have the best relationships or like the greatest friends at school. There's the community level of that friendship and being part of a neighborhood, just like with the adults that our parks are providing. Really amazingly, but also we could do more and we should think about those investments. So I appreciate that comment, and I'm also committed to doing what I can, and whether it's my role or not, showing up and making sure I have the information so that what is in my control and the votes that I can take are in alignment with what our city needs.
Commissioner Benny.
Thank you, President Brandt. This is an exciting conversation. I think that, I think it's also just a reminder that this was about presenting the NPP 20 plan, the annual report, because that's actually, I think, an ordinance requirement from the concurrent ordinance that's presented annually, because it is a co-investment from the city and to the park with the park board. But I'm hearing some other things that really do come from the levy, and this body will actually be have the opportunity to support. So, I know that my colleagues here, these are great questions, and I know that the superintendent and his fine team would be more than happy to have deeper discussions. So would I. So if you have anything, too, for me, just let me know. But the parks are well positioned. We're going to have a little gap on our youth engagement for 2 years. It's not a big dollar amount, but the property tax, it's a hole until we get the permanent funding. This is a launched program underway, doing amazing work. I'd be happy to talk with anyone anytime about that. So thanks for these questions. It's exciting.
Seeing no further discussion, I'll thank the Park Board representatives who have appeared before us today and remind my colleagues that I believe we'll have a budget presentation later this year in which some of these additional questions can be followed up on. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll ask the clerk to receive and file the report. Item 6 on the agenda is a debt presentation from the Director of Banking, Investments, and Debt, Alan Hoppe.
Good afternoon, President Brandt and Commissioners. I'm Alan Hoppe, Director of Banking, Investments, Debt, and the Merchant Card Program. I'm here to give a brief overview of our debt profile, as well as the authorized or amounts of bonds that the city has authorized that we would possibly sell at some point in the future. So I'm not coming here with a resolution today asking for bonds to be approved. That will happen later in the process, several months from now. First off, we start out with a picture of the debt capacity as of the end of December. It is based on a statutory formula. It talks about our market, a percent of our market value. And there are some different numbers for different cities. This particular percentage, 3.66%, applies to the city of Minneapolis. So the legal debt limit, almost $2.5 billion. We have about $0.3 billion that falls under that umbrella. We do have other debt, revenue supported type of debt that doesn't factor in the calculation. The unused margin, $2 billion, and then as you can see, the percentage of debt that has been incurred is 13%. Here we have a listing of the various types of debt. The total is $820 million. This is the balance. And I'll inject before I forget that the BET approves our debt issuance. It also approves the tax levy. The tax levy includes a levy for debt service, and that levy for debt service is based on this, or focuses on the tax-supported debt, not the other types that have revenue sources. You can see we have a mixture of debt types. The largest portion, enterprise funds, these are the utilities, water, sewer type of debt. Then next is the tax-supported stuff. That's the broad-based items, capital, whether it's for a fire department, some other type of public works, projects, city hall type improvements, etc. I'm going to go ahead and move on, but stop me at any time for questions. Here we have a history of outstanding debt. We do a comparison here so you can look at 10 years. Generally speaking, our total debt has not grown much. Slightly mixture modifications in the portion, but that is very slight. Current bond ratings, I think you've received updates on this as they've happened during the last couple of years. We are a AAA credit. Why are we a AAA credit? Leadership, of course, financial leadership, responsible budgeting, demographics, economics, the industrial commercial base, all these elements that contribute to a positive community. We pay two rating agencies for our ratings. That's Standard & Poor's and Fitch. We have some debt from the past that was also rated by Moody's. And while we're not paying for them to continue the rating, they continue to rate the debt from the past that they had rated. This is a yield curve picture. So we go out 30 years here. This is a sample of Minnesota tax-exempt municipal rates. So we would expect to pay something like this. We would, when we sell bonds, we'll have a 1-year maturity, a 2-year maturity, et cetera, et cetera. Typically only out to 20 years, but we have some cases where we might put some out there as far as 30 years. There are 4 lines here. You can see the dates on those on the right. So and these are dates that we last sold bonds, except for 2024 here. That's just this last week. That gives you a picture of where interest rates are at. These are bond yields. And I guess if you've followed the mortgage market, that's more common. You know that rates have come up, money market rates have come up. And so compared to back when we were in COVID, the yield curve has come up across the board. Right where we're at the moment, May 17th, I would say when we sell bonds in the next few months or sometime probably after Labor Day, we're probably going to be in the same range. There's not large items happening in the economic world as far as expected. Of course, the unexpected can change things in a hurry. This is another version of what you just saw. I'm going to use my mouse here to kind of highlight. So this is taking a 10-year municipal bond, Minnesota type, and showing you the history of what that average yield was over time. And so up in this range right here in late 2021, that's one of these reference, oops, get that backward. One of these that's up here, October 2021, 1.39. So really cheap money back then. And then we've sold basically in the fall of 22, in the fall of 23, and rates have come up. Understandably, our cost of money has come up with that. But how do we compare to the last 10 years? We're probably kind of average in a general sense. The period of COVID was an exceptional period of low interest rates in the 10-year part of the curve. Overlapping debt, that picture, it's good to see that the green bars, the total overlapping debt, these would be the school district, the county, et cetera. For the last, 6 years here, it's been relatively stable. So that's good for the taxpayers. As far as the presentation goes, I'll just summarize some things I talked about for our credit rating, our stable financial condition. Of course, if there's current discussion about a budget shortfall for the future, that's to be worked on. But when I'm talking about stable financial condition, this is so far where we're at today. Moderately diversified revenues, that's very beneficial. If one goes down, we have some diversification that hopefully the other ones can help us along. Of course, we plan ahead for the CIP and the bonding, and we can go into that with the bond rating agencies. They also, of course, do look at our budgets, operating statements, and those sort of details. Our debt levels, as you saw, are relatively low. Governance has been stable, consistent financial management. Of course, we get recognized annually by the Government Finance Officers Association for our financial report. And then as far as bond sale risks go, at the moment, I don't see any particular city risks that would jeopardize our rating. Of course, I hopefully never eat my words here with that, but the things that the bond rating agencies have been looking for, we've delivered, and that has helped us with getting improvements in our bond ratings. Again, there are unpredictable things that can happen that could change the situation. So with that, that's a kind of overview of debt. I'm next going to go into the list of authorized financial projects. Before I do that, are there any other questions on this?
Are there any questions for Mr. Hoppe?
Portion.
Commissioner Benny.
Thank you. I have one question, and it's back on the slide with the year-end debt balances. And I think I asked this last year, and I think it's just that one. So at the bottom, it's the Park Board plus Downtown East Development, which are together as a line item here, but those are really separate. Monies are separate organizationally, I think. I mean, do you remember? Is that the case? Because I believe this would be for NPP 20 related debt for the Park Board?
Yes. Of course, the Downtown East development, I think there was some separation of where the debt was created and how it got lined up like that.
Yes, because it wasn't initially the Park Board's investment, yeah. But I'm wondering, it'd be great to see those separated out, because I think it makes it look like that Downtown East development commitment was done not by the Park Board, but by the city, I believe, right, related to the stadium. So the Park Board's number is, I think, much more modest than 63. So I just want to, just if we could identify that as a separate piece.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you mentioned that last year, I apologize. We didn't get it done here.
Commissioner Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On slide 1, actually, I was curious with the debt percentage allowed, is that a fixed 3.66, or is that like an aggregate percentage based on the various asset types?
That's President, Commissioners, the 3.66 is the max total. We can mix up the debt any way we like, but that's the max.
And then I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. We could take on a total of $2.4 billion of debt. We choose to take on $298 million, and so this 2.1 that's the additional capacity we could take on statutorily?
President Brandt and Commissioners, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
If I can add, of course, we might have statutory authorization, but it would be a big question if we went that far with our bond ratings, cost of money, et cetera.
Correct.
Mr. Hoppe, I would like to ask the 13% percentage. Does the League of Municipalities or the legislature or an entity within state government track how that compares with municipalities across Minnesota? Using 13% of your legal debt capacity.
President Brandt and Commissioners, I don't have an answer. I'll ask the League of Minnesota Cities about that. As I mentioned, that some of them have a different limit, like 3%, et cetera. So we're a different kind of creature, I guess.
The other question or observation I wanted to make, and of course it's one thing to be well below your legal debt limit and another to be able to pay for a higher amount of debt load. But I noticed that somewhere else in the massive information that we read for today's meeting, our capital improvement program as a city, and it's more of an observation for my colleagues rather than a question, the capital improvement program averages $214 million from 2026 through 2029, and that's substantially below what was the program in 2024 and 2025. And it just raises the question in my mind, and perhaps with a staffer coming on board and a work program that will be assigned to that staffer, we might look at the adequacy of the city's capital improvement program in meeting the city's infrastructure needs. I realize that there's a lot of competing priorities right now, and we're in a very tight budget situation, but this is looking out a couple of years, so that's just an observation. If there are no further questions, I will ask you to continue with your presentation, Mr. Hoppe.
President Brandt and Commissioners, here we, once a year, we bring to you the list of authorized projects. This includes items, projects that we did not bond for in the past, as well as newly authorized ones, mostly back in December with the budget approval process. The numbers are a bit small because there is a lot of data here. The version that was in the agenda publicly published is a little different than this one from the sorting. The numbers should be the same. But what we've done here in this particular version is sorted by project on the left rather than just past authorized and newly authorized. It gives you a little different look at the information if you want to kind of assess the situation by project. I don't usually have too much to say about this. It's important for us in order to bond, we have to know what's our legal limit from the standpoint of what the city has put forth as approvals. This report is organized by the groups, whether it's water utility, sewer utility, art, et cetera. So we got different groups. The top portion here is the enterprise revenue supported type of debt or authorizations. And then we get down below, the main part of the section you're looking at there are basically tax supported. And just as a generalization, we are bringing forward old projects about equal in total to the newly authorized, and it's the whole capital processing and planning that results in projects, just because they're approved like back in December, aren't necessarily going to be built or dug or purchased here in 2024. So these things, as we've talked about before, go on for several years, and we'll carry these balances to track those. And then on the bottom, we have a section on assessment debt that includes Park Board as well as the city, and then a grand total. So I'm not, I don't go into the project level and have the knowledge base on individual projects, but I can address the bonding process and any other questions about what we've compiled here.
Commissioner Priest-Hinson.
I just wanted to go back to make sure I understood a previous conversation. I was seeing a communication that came up from community about the Phillips Urban Farm. And if I recall correctly, Mr. Mayor, you had mentioned that dollars allocated, even if the site changes, we can still have the dollars while we're figuring out where the facility would be. Is that an accurate depiction of that? I remember I think it was previous to this iteration of BET, but there was question around the flux of that because the community had to secure those funds, and it seems like they were able to secure the funds in the last session, state session that just ended. So I'm just curious, now that that's happened, it does seem like we're looking for another site for sure, but we already have funds secured, or are we bonding for new ones? Question to both of you, I suppose.
Madam Chair, I don't recall the context of how I framed your question previously, but what I can say is, yes, we have been looking at new sites, but no, we did not get the funding from the legislature for the acquisition of the parcel where Reef Depot presently is. And so a lot of that remains to be determined. But the purchase agreement that was authorized, Council Vice President, Council President, help me out, last year at some point, had requisite amounts that needed to be paid at predetermined dates, and at least the state's portion of that won't get paid.
Okay. So with that being said, are we still looking for an alternative site? And have we secured, do we already have the funding through bonding for any site? Because I thought I saw some projects on here.
Yeah, sorry, Madam Chair. I think there's kind of two different questions. There's, do we have alternative sites?
Yes.
And we have been exploring that. And then there's a second question, whether EP&I can acquire the site. And at least under the current purchase agreement, the answer is no.
Okay. And then for outside of that, specific to the facility need, the need of the city, there are some bonding on this list, if I recall when I looked at it last night, there are some requests in here specific for that, correct? The Hiawatha, so we're going to bond for it not knowing where it's going to be?
Madam Chair, I believe the designation for Hiawatha site was bonding for the facility itself and not necessarily the facility, the Public Works facility at the Roof Depot location. So, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is easily transitioned to a different parcel. But again, that is a separate question from whether EP&I is able to purchase the Roof Depot site.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if you have anything else to add. I guess my question is, are we bonding for something too soon, given all of the uncertainty?
President Brandt and Vice President Priest-Stinson and commissioners, we do have some prior authorizations that are still in here. But really pending the results of conversations that happen in the various administrative and political arenas. So it's there at the moment. And as far as Water 18 goes, at this point, we're not likely to be bonding anything this year.
And Madam Chair, we still need that money regardless of the outcome at the Roof Depot site. I mean, we're going to need the money for a site somewhere.
One other follow-up question.
Commissioner Priest-Stinson.
Thank you. I can continue?
Yeah.
Okay. One other question then would be, I also seem to recall that if it's a similar or like project, we are able to, even though it was secured for a particular thing, we are able to move money around. In that way, if like funding was needed for a different project while this is all in flux, if another project of similar, I can't remember the terminology that we used before, similar use, those funds are able to move between projects, is that correct?
Commissioner Fry, if you'd.
Thank you, and Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, I'm messing up my titles here.
It was 2 years of that, it's okay.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm looking to staff to correct me in case I'm wrong here, but I think that was just, the terminology used there was merely a placeholder and would apply to any public works facility that met that designation. So
Okay.
again, the term Hiawatha site does not mean it's necessarily on Hiawatha. It's monies that we would use for the public works facility when built.
Okay.
And
And
I
we
see
will
Jane
need that funding.
nodding her head, so yes.
Okay,
And that's funding that we need regardless
right.
of where the site ultimately is.
It will need to be funded.
Correct.
And we foresee that it would be in somewhat of an immediate future that we need to
Somewhat,
have the
yes.
money on hand.
Correct.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I need to step back a bit on this one, and perhaps Mayor can clarify. Which of the projects that were to be put on the Hiawatha site, PSD 21, the Recruitment and Training Center, or Water 18, the consolidation of various utility operations, is the casualty of the Roof Depot if it should proceed? Commissioner Fry?
Mr. Chair, both.
So if Roof Depot proceeds, the city would be looking at 2 facilities off the Hiawatha site. Commissioner Fry.
Mr. Chair, can you repeat the question?
If the Roof Depot project proceeds as the community envisions it, and I differ from some of my colleagues on that proposal, but are both the training and recruitment center and the water facility going to have to find sites off-site of the Hiawatha campus?
So, or
just one of them?
So the plan for the site was to be purchased by EP&I ultimately. They would acquire the site, and then they had a vision for what they would do on that parcel. All of this is subject to a purchase agreement. And so I'm going to keep any of our opinions out of this. I'm just kind of giving you the present lay of the land, which is there is a purchase agreement. Mm-hmm. And that purchase agreement had certain deadlines where funding needed to be provided, funding by the state, funding by deed, funding by EP&I, and then the parties would meet to then finalize the transaction, I believe in June or July of this year. And so as of right now, unless something changes in the next month, which of course it could, that purchase agreement wouldn't be able to be completed because the funding wasn't allocated. And so there could be another site where both the Public Works facility as well as the Workforce Training Center is located. I guess that's getting a little bit ahead of me, though.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Fry. Commissioner Benny? Sorry, I jumped in.
That's okay. Thank you. Okay, so my question is sort of related generically to the facility investment here, not specific to that investment. But so if I'm looking particularly at the storm sewer grouping of projects. So that's essentially bonding against the future utility payments, right? So, and those aren't general obligation bonds. When you bond against a utility because you know you're having what is that called? Enterprise fund bonding, or?
President Brandt and Commissioner Abinay. Those are revenue-based bonds that would be funded from the revenues of the utility. We will still do those as general obligations.
Okay.
In the event revenues were insufficient, bondholders could count on our general taxing authority to pay the bondholders.
Okay, but the idea is it's essentially these bonding categories exist: water, storm water, sanitary sewer, because those are rate areas, city revenue rate areas. So a question I have, if it could at all be answered, some of these questions I remember from last year. I think we had a similar discussion, but if I could, if somebody could maybe email me, I'm very curious about this. It looks to me like this site aside, these projects aside, essentially there's some bonding for probably some portion of this site development work related to storm sewer and infrastructure. And I just want storm sewer, but it's true for water as well, sanitary sewer. So is this money being bonded to bring funding into the project, not for architectural aspects of the project, but specifically for infrastructure on these sites that the city is planning to develop wherever they shall end up being? Does that make sense?
President Brandt and Commissioners and Commissioner Abinay, that makes sense. I'm not going to go deep on an answer because it gets really into the public works expertise. We have projects, as you see, that are enterprise in nature and set up as authorized that way, and we will bond that way. And then there are some that might be tax supported, and that gets to the philosophy of if there's some general public support for something, a need that's so common beyond just providing the water service or the sewer service.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it looks to me
Commissioner
like
Bennett?
there's some significant amounts of dollars that are being bonded against the utility funds. That's how I would read it, that that support infrastructure for this overall site development, which also includes a building and a parking lot and all those things. And that's, I think, what I'm curious about, that the city's looking for different pots of money to assemble to develop these facilities and these sites. So if anyone had any more information about that, how it's determined, here's, I guess, we've been told at the park board that the storm sewer fee can't go to support site development work, even if we're building storm sewer systems. And I would tend to say that the city's actually doing just that. So that's my question. Point me in the direction, please, then, of someone that could help me learn more about this. I would appreciate that.
President Brandt and Commissioner Abbott and Commissioners, so as I mentioned, anything that you see in the very top section of this report is enterprise-oriented, and that will be funded through the various charge fees. The other stuff down below gets the levy. So in the case of the Water 18, there's a large numbers on the books, but at the moment that's not going anywhere.
I'll make the observation that perhaps there's sufficient interest in this particular site and topic, even though we're only involved in authorizing the bonds as a group sale, that it might be appropriate at a future meeting to get a representative of Public Works here to answer additional questions. This project, this Water 18, has 20 different bond authorizations. I counted them. That's in part because some are old and have expired, and they had to be replaced by other authorizations. Some are for enterprise-supported bonds, and some are for non-enterprise supported bonds. And of course, there are several different divisions of Public Works involved. This thing has a history even longer than the 3rd Precinct. I sure would like to. I'd sure like to see either some action or a change in plan. I wanted to ask you about, Mr. Hoppe, about a couple of items that were on your bonding list earlier in your previous presentation. I believe there's $53 million in bonds outstanding for Target Center and $26 million outstanding for the Convention Center. And I believe the Convention Center is down to 2 more payments, maybe one this year and one next year. So it doesn't really make any sense to refinance something that's that close to the end of the term, I guess. But with the Target Center, how many years out? Do you have a sense of how many years are remaining on that particular obligation?
President Brandt and commissioners, I don't have that number of years right here on the Target Center. Of course, there's revenue backing for that, and then I will say that, as you saw in those yield curves, now is not necessarily an attractive time for refinancing. Of course, we do periodically look at those opportunities, and some of those do have some complications with them. In the case of the Convention Center, we're setting that money aside, and since we're only paying 0.6% on that debt, and the money we've set aside is earning quite a bit, we're looking to take care of that during the next couple of years, and there'd be no practical or business reason to refinance those.
Not in terms of interest savings, but if we could lengthen for example, the Target Center debt, that lowers the annual obligation. And I'm looking at it from the standpoint of that's a consumer, one of the larger consumers of the city's downtown assets fund outflow, which is funded by the sales and special taxes. And frankly, I'm interested in doing whatever we can to get more of that money flowing into the general fund. And it seems to me that if we lowered the obligation on an annual basis, we could achieve some of that and maybe get us through this hump of the next couple of years or more, while city property taxes are affected by what's happening downtown. You don't need to respond to that. Okay. Are there any additional questions? Commissioner Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This conversation about general obligation bonds versus, bonding against enterprise revenue, still backed by general obligation, just kind of made me revisit maybe just a confusion I have just maybe as a new member of this body. But the city debt subject to limit was $298 million, but the year-end balances totaled up to $820 million. Is that discrepancy a result of that debt sitting on the enterprise fund books and not in the general fund? Or what's the source of that discrepancy, just so I can understand it?
President Brandt and commissioners, excuse me for jumping ahead without a green light. The answer I would push back or direct you toward is the debt service going to be paid for by property taxes or other sources? Mm-hmm. And that's the connection. So that $300 million that we're going to pay through property taxes is subject to that roughly several billion limit. So that's the talk on that side, and then all the other sources, Target Center or Convention Center, enterprise debt, they have revenue sources of their own, even though we may put our pledge behind them with our general tax support.
Okay, that's exactly what I was thinking it was. So just making sure my mind's right.
Commissioner Benny.
President Brandt, it's a point of inquiry, and I apologize, but I'm as we move on the agenda, I'm hoping we can take up items 8 and 9 next for the vote, and I will commit to going back and watching the video for the pieces I missed, but I have a park board meeting that I have to get to.
I understand, and I'm prepared to postpone item 9, the resolution regarding the charter amendment after discussion, so that you don't miss that vote. And any further questions for Mr. Hoppe? Okay, with that, I'll ask the clerk to receive and file. Thank you, Mr. Hoppe, for your presentation. Is that a motion to amend the agenda, Commissioner Benny?
Yes, either to amend the agenda, or if it's required, to shift the order and do number 7 after 8 and 9, after number 9.
President Brandt, you do not need a motion to
All right.
Move items around on the agenda.
Thank you to the clerk for that clarification. So we will do so. Thank you, Mr. Hoppe. We now have a resolution before us, number 8, approving the Board of Estimate and Taxation preliminary 2025 budget and tax levy. And we'll have a presentation by CFO Dye on this. And is there a motion to get it before us?
So moved.
Mayor Fry moves, and Commissioner Benny, are you second? Second. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner CFO Dye.
President Brandt, Commissioners, my name is Dushani Dye. I serve as the Chief Finance Officer for the city, as well as the BET. I'm here to present the proposed budget for BET for 2025. I've appropriated I'm recommending that the board appropriate $156,347,000. I'll start again. $156,347 for 2025 expense budget. And you'll see the detail in front of you. $27,460 will be appropriated for contractual services. Operating costs of $2,515. Personnel benefits of $15,500, and that's to cover salaries of $110,872. The salaries are budgeted for 2 elected officials plus a staff member. This is a change from last year's budget that had more contractual dollars than personnel. And the revenues will be supported by BET levy of $100,000. And I'm proposing use of fund balance of $56,347. Given that there's over $300,000 in the fund balance for BET as of year-end 2023. With that, I stand for questions.
Any questions? All right. I just want to make the observation that I had a conversation with CFO Dye on the question of hiring a staffer and whether the amount that's listed in the proposed budget would be adequate. And she assured me that it's possible to amend the budget during 2025 if need be, as long as we have the money in the fund, and we certainly have a substantial amount, and I think it's best to not increase our levy at all in light of what is going on elsewhere in the city and the budget pressures that the mayor alluded to in his State of the City speech. So with that, are there any further questions? All right. We have a motion before us. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Pardon me, President Brandt, you need to do a roll call for a resolution.
I'm sorry. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Fry.
Aye.
Commissioner Bene.
Aye.
Commissioner Payne.
Aye.
Commissioner Chugtai.
Aye.
Vice President Priest-Stinson.
Aye.
President Brandt.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
Okay. Thank you very much, CFO Dye. The next item on our agenda is a resolution that I drafted. Is it permissible for the chair to move a resolution? Okay, I will move the resolution for discussion purposes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion is before us. Is there any discussion? Mayor Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am generally supportive, but have an amendment that at least I believe makes sense. So my understanding of this resolution is the primary impetus is to have a tiebreaker. It's to have a 7th person so that we don't run into the 3-3 split. Is that right?
That is one of the okay. Primary motivations.
And that makes sense to me. I see also there's a name change, which I think is a more honest representation and transparent representation of what this board does. Mentioning it's the Board of Debt and Taxes. All that makes sense to me. The part that I would ask and move be changed is that let me take a step back. The whole purpose is here to ask the Charter Commission to study and then recommend a potential referendum on the amendment or the amendments. And while I do believe that I am supportive of this, in fact, the likelihood is very, very strong that I will support it, I don't want to presuppose an outcome of whatever that study from the Charter Commission reveals. And so what I would want to see is adding the words in the point number 1 there to consider whether, rather than just to restore the size of the board to 7 members, to say consider whether to restore the size of the board to 7 members. And rather than on point number II there, add a 3rd member of strike that and say consider whether the additional member should be publicly elected by the Minneapolis voters. And then, if you could pass these down. And then on the 3rd one, also adding the word consider. And you should have the amendment itself in front of you shortly here. And then further striking the determination for the board to request the council to initiate the charter amendment referendum proposal prior to a determination by the Charter Commission being made. So again, my strong belief is, and a strong assumption is, that I'm going to be very supportive of this. On its face, I am supportive of it. But given that we're asking another body to analyze it, I just don't want to presuppose the outcome before the analysis takes place.
Are there any other members who wish to be heard? Commissioner Priest Stinson.
Would now be the appropriate time to make another suggestion of change to the resolution, which would then put what I'm going to say next in queue before the mayor's suggestion? Or do we need to discuss the mayor's first?
Given that
before
there's not
I
a
offer
motion at
something?
this point.
Or just discussion,
or
right?
did you move it?
I'm
as-
sorry, I would move to amend just to make it simpler.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there discussion on the mayor's proposed amendment? Commissioner Priest Stinson.
I could I understand the language of consider, especially when we're talking about restoring. They could say we need 9, just to throw something out. But the intention, as I understood it from President Brandt, how it was presented to me and how I'm thinking about it, is to restore to its previous state. And I don't support the considering whether to be publicly elected, because that is, for me, it was a critical and pivotal point to this, and that there does need to be proper representation from the public. It's the strength of this board. It's part of the reason why it exists. And so if we were going to add another member, yes, breaking a tie, and also consistency, more than breaking a tie, consistency across not just like government boards in general, commissions, etc. It would be moving in alignment and being moving in alignment with that and having consistency more than using the phrase tiebreaker, even though that is an outcome of doing that. But I do strongly think it should be a member that is publicly elected and not yet another elected official that already has power in other places, because I believe that the power of the people, even though I am elected, but I am still elected specifically to this and only for this, and the power of the people is important. Community power is important, and having a voice that specifically sits here just on that and not thinking of all the other pieces, because the reality is, in many ways, and I don't mean this in a negative, but in many ways, because the elected, the folks that are already elected to sit here, you already hold so much power, and the decisions that you make here, depending on, the who sits here, you all already have power in other places, and this particular board can also be used to give you additional power and to have other agendas that come into this space that an elected member of the board isn't privy to and isn't consulted on and wouldn't know, that there's other conversations to move other things that you all are trying to do in other spaces. And so it specifically reading a member of the public does matter to me, and I don't think that it should be a consideration. How much more power do already elected officials that represent their particular area need versus the people having independent voices specifically sitting here whose agenda is this and only this? So I don't agree with using consider specifically to the part of whether to be they should be publicly elected. I am friendly, though, to the part about the consider restoring. I could get behind that and be convinced, just not on the latter point.
Commissioner Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My reading of the original language of this, first of all, the headline is requesting consideration of charter amendment referendum proposal. So, we're asking the Charter Commission to consider all of these things at the top. So it kind of just gets into maybe just different preferences and syntax, which doesn't seem to be that meaningful of a difference. But where there is a meaningful difference, I think, is the intention here. And I think my understanding is the intention is not to ask the Charter Commission what their opinion is, it's to tell them what our opinion is. So I support the main language because it's saying we actually have a position on this, and we would like you to consider that position rather than, having a more passive role in this. So I think it's less ambiguous to say we do actually have a preference, and we would like you to consider that preference. And then as far as the strike through on the city council, I don't believe any of this is a binding resolution, and so I don't think this mandates that the Charter Commission or the city council respond to this resolution. It's just a request for consideration, is my understanding, unless the author has a different clarifying view of the intention.
If I could clarify that, I am bringing this resolution forward because last month, on about 24 hours notice, or maybe it was earlier this month, I had the opportunity to appear before the Charter Commission and express my opinion on this topic, and I made very clear that the Board of Estimate has not taken a position on this, that I was speaking only for myself, but said I would bring the matter back to the board, and I think they are planning to send it to their amendment review committee. I think that the mayor's proposed amendment is unnecessary for this reason. This would follow one of three paths in the city guide to amending the charter, which are governed by state law. Their petition or the Charter Commission coming up with something on its own, or the City Council asking that something be studied. And under the City Council option, the statute provides that the Charter Commission can either approve the amendment and recommend it, reject the amendment and recommend that it not be submitted, or offer a substitute of its own design. And I think that accomplishes what the mayor is attempting to achieve here, which is to give them some latitude. And I included the City Council in this very deliberately because having the City Council make the proposal is a formal approach to the Charter Commission under statute, whereas this board has no particular standing to initiate. We're just giving a sense of the BET. So is there any further discussion? Commissioner Benny.
Thank you. That's actually, that last piece is the part that I was wondering about, though. Does this, what if the City Council didn't proceed with that? Wouldn't take that action? So does this ensure that they will take that action? And so if that's omitted as the mayor's amendment is trying to do here, it shouldn't matter, right?
Commissioner Benny, this basically is exploring two options. One is the City Council option, but by appearing before the Charter Commission and asking them to consider this, I also put it in their bailiwick, and they could, if they chose, initiate a review. Is there any further discussion on the mayor's amendment? Mayor Fry, Commissioner Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to reiterate, there's not a single item on here that's sitting here today I oppose. I agree with all of them. Considering whether to restore the board to 7 members makes sense to me. Although I could see a scenario where the Charter Commission ran some analysis, as you stated, Madam Vice Chair, and found that a different figure was more applicable. With the consider whether an additional member should be publicly elected, to your point, I tend to agree with you. I don't have a better solution as to how it would set up. I'm not advocating for mayoral appointment. Although if somebody wanted to make a motion on that, no, it's a joke. And then regarding the third one, I mean, obviously I could commit to that right now. Today, I don't really think that's that big of a difference. And so all I'm suggesting is my position may change based on what the analysis reveals. But sitting here today, I agree with these items. That's why I would want them to consider it, to put forward the analysis, and then all of us would then have the information to form a final opinion. This is not the kind of thing that I'm going to die on the hill for, but I do think that it's a helpful amendment.
Thank you, Commissioner Fry, and I will reiterate that the Charter Commission, regardless of how we word the resolution, does have the power to make any change it wants in the three items that we are listing here. Is there any further discussion on the mayor's proposed amendment? Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Fry.
Aye.
Commissioner Benny.
Aye.
Commissioner Payne.
Nay.
Commissioner Chuktai.
No.
Vice President Priest Stinson.
Nay.
President Brandt.
No.
There are 2 ayes and 4 nays.
All right, so the amendment fails, and the original resolution is before us. And I can't remember, did we have a motion? Yes, I think I moved it. All right. Any discussion on the proposed amendment? Mayor Fry.
Very briefly, I'm going to vote yes on this one, but would like to reserve the right to change my mind if the analysis reveals otherwise.
Thank you for that comment, and I appreciate that. We all reserve that right. Commissioner Benny, before you have to walk out the door.
Yeah, no, and I just want to say thank you actually for putting this forward. I think this is really good. This has been kind of, I think, needing rectifying for a long time. I think this makes sense, and I actually support the publicly elected third member as well. So thank you for putting this out there.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will call the roll on the original motion.
Commissioner Fry.
Aye.
Commissioner Benny.
Aye.
Commissioner Payne.
Aye.
Commissioner Chuktai.
Aye.
Vice President Priest Stinson.
Aye.
President Brandt.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
Thank you, colleagues. We have, I believe, one additional presentation on our agenda today, and it's the one I spent the most time preparing for, so I'm sorry it got deferred till late in the meeting, and I appreciate Commissioner Benny sticking around for this, so in the face of a imminent park board meeting. And I appreciate the mayor making it to this meeting for this discussion. Feel free to go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, President Brandt, Vice President Priest Stinson, Commissioners. My name is Jane DeSenza, Budget Director at the City, and I'm here today with my colleague Justin Coles to discuss with you the 2025-2026 current service level budget calculations. We gave a similar presentation to the Budget Committee earlier this week, so this is a repeat for some of you. But these are the estimated expenses and revenues that will serve as the starting point for the budget decisions over the summer. The information in these slides takes many months to prepare by our team as well as other enterprise partners. And of course, we're focused on the technical aspects of this, and it's a forward-looking presentation. So much of the discussion around department programs and operating decisions will come as part of the Budget Committee's work later in the year. Throughout these slides, you will see some historical actuals as well as the future projections for 25 and 26, and we will be discussing more the 2025 and 26 figures. So this is a look at our agenda. Essentially what we're going to do is review the budget framework for you, starting with the estimated costs of existing city operations that were approved on an ongoing basis last year. Throughout, we'll be comparing to the 2024 adopted budget. We'll also look at our revenue forecasts for 25 and 26, tie that all together with a summary of the general fund outlook, and then briefly look at the timeline and next steps. So just moving into some budget takeaways, financial takeaways. As a reminder, this is just a snapshot. There are some items that we are still finalizing just as a virtue of when data is available. The city will present a balanced budget for adoption. And when we're looking at all funds so far, we are seeing some modest growth in the expense side and the revenue side. When we look at the general fund, which is of course where the city's policymakers have spend the most time in budget decision making. It's a slightly different picture. So expenses are decreasing at 0.48%, but revenues are decreasing at a greater clip at 3.64%. So that gives us a gap between revenues and expenses in the general fund. This is largely distilled to increasing costs of personnel. We are just in a different labor market than we were a few years ago, and so negotiated labor agreements are a little bit higher than anticipated, as well as job studies. We're also seeing decreasing revenues due to the fall off of the ARPA revenue replacement in 2025, which is something that we anticipated. And this is a similar situation for other cities and school boards around the country. We've been planning proactively for this, so our situation is less dire than many other jurisdictions. This pie chart is included for reference to show you the scale of the general fund as it relates to other funds within the city. So we're looking at a general fund for 2025 that is $682 million, or about 40% of the total expenses in the city. All these funds are described in the budget book, so I would encourage folks to look there for more detail if you're curious. Capital improvement, we've already discussed this a bit tonight, so I know this body is well aware of its importance. It's, of course, a part of the city budget that people interact with a great deal, and, of course, where we have a lot of public engagement with decision-making. So we included this slide just to demonstrate that work. The Plan 2025 column is really the current service level for the capital program, so it's $258 million. The Capital Long Range Improvement Committee just had one of their meetings today over lunch. They're continuing to meet, ranking and reviewing the 130 or so capital projects from city departments, as well as the Park Board and the Municipal Building Commission. And their recommendation informs the mayor's budget and then makes its way to the City Council. And this is one other sort of contextual slide, just slicing the data in a different way. So this is an all funds view of expenses from 2022 actuals through the 26 plan for departments, for operating departments. So this is just included for context. And again, the Budget Committee will be hearing directly from those departments in September and October. So transitioning into the details of the current service level, we're going to be talking to you about what the current service level is, how we calculate it, what are those component parts, why are they going up or down, and throughout we're referencing our financial policies. So those references are just provided for in case you want to do further research on your own. They are voted on by the council. They are also informed by industry best practices from GAP to GFOA, as well as city and state ordinances. And at this point, my colleague Justin is going to come present.
Thank you, Jane.
Welcome to the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, President Brandt, Vice President Stinson, and Commissioners. As Jane mentioned, my name is Justin Coles, and I'm the Budget Manager for the City of Minneapolis. So we're here today giving the annual presentation on the current service level to this body and to share the starting point of the budget before any new decisions are made. The current service level presentation does not bind this body to any action regarding setting the maximum levy, but it does explain where we're at as of today. The following information I will share about what the CSL is derived from the Center on Budget Priorities. So the CSL services multiple purposes. It's a reality check in the process. It indicates what the city would have to spend on a given program to maintain the program at its current level in absence of any policy changes. It reflects the impact of factors that cause year-to-year variations in the cost of providing a given service, such as inflation, changing wage levels, population growth, and economic and demographic shifts, as well as enacted policy changes that have yet to take effect. The CSL is essential for budget transparency and accountability because it lets the public see what the budget really does and then hold their elected officials accountable for those changes. The CSL is a budget methodology, and it's also a method of calculating, which is used by states and municipalities across the country. The CSL is a baseline projection and tells how much it will cost the city to deliver the same services and goods in the following year. It's also important to note what the CSL is not. The CSL is not a tool or methodology for conducting a retroactive analysis into previous year's spending. Rather, it's a tool to prepare for the future. Historical data can be used as a reference point rather than mechanisms to do a deep dive into specific programmatic areas. In summary, the CSL is used for understanding the fiscal impact of future policy changes. Without a baseline, it's hard to see the effect of those changes. The figures we'll present today are a snapshot in time, but they're crucial for decision-making around the property tax levy. So, as mentioned, the city uses a current service level method of budgeting.
Excuse me, could I interrupt for just a minute and ask you to elaborate a little bit on what's considered the discretionary base and what is outside of the discretionary base? It's a term that's new to me.
Yes, absolutely. President Brandt, commissioners. So the discretionary base is essentially non-personnel, non-allocated charges in a department's budget. So it's, generally speaking, training, travel, operating supplies that we do hold flat year over year.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll get into in the future slides, but financial policies 1.5.1, which is where we are guided by the current service level methodology, and it states that the budget process is intended to weigh all competing requests for city resources within expected fiscal constraints. Any requests for new programs or activities or expansion of existing must be submitted as part of the budget process. So the CSL can be simply defined as utilizing any ongoing base commitments from a prior year as the starting point for the following. The key point being the continuation of current services into each subsequent year. There are 3 expense components that make up the current service level budget, as you can see here on the slide. And those are personnel expenses, base expenses, and those internal service charges. Going a bit more deeper into those, the personnel bucket, this is all wage and fringe expenses for staff across the enterprise. Most of the personnel accounts are inflated year over year to account for planned step increases, cost of living adjustments, and labor agreement settlements. The base expenses, as just mentioned, are those other non-personnel buckets of expenses, and those are primarily held flat year over year. Moving on to internal service charges, we do have a variety of internal service departments that provide goods and services to customer departments within the city to account for the cost of a variety of services, including fleet, rent, liability insurance, and others. Internal service charges are adjusted year over year based on anticipated cost of these overhead goods and services. While we can conceptually think about using the 24 adopted budget as the starting place for 2025, there are many departments and their staff involved in validating budget data that is carried over from one year to the next. In order to develop the 2025 CSL, many processes occur concurrently, placing great demand on our departments, and we'd like to acknowledge and thank them for their time and effort contributing to budget development. Additionally, these CSL development processes are guided by the city's financial policies, which are reviewed and adopted by the council. The specific policies will be called out on the subsequent slides where they direct the budget process. Starting on the left side of this slide, we see a graphic of the 24 adopted budget components. We begin 2025 CSL development using the 2024 adopted budget data from those 4 buckets. Budget kickoff starts the journey to developing the CSL. Within budget kickoff, we discuss policy priorities, budget capacity, and the overall budget development process, so departments can begin crafting their budget proposals as well as reviewing their baseline data. Then one-time expenditures are removed from the 2024 adopted budget, so only ongoing expenditures are included in the CSL. The next task is a comprehensive personnel review, which is pertinent as these expenses are a significant portion of the total operating budget and do fluctuate year to year. Additionally, budget and HR have been working closely to both improve the accuracy of our data on existing staffing levels and compensation, as well as make sound projections for future growth. Next is the internal service fund allocation process. During this process, provider departments estimate their expenses for providing goods and services to its customers.
Then budget and accounting staff allocate out those costs according to the allocation models. Lastly, customer departments review these changes for inclusion in the CSL. We also build a detailed revenue forecasting process. Those forecasts are based on collaborations between departments and the budget office in which impacts on revenue streams are assessed. These impacts include generally how sensitive or stable the revenue stream is, assessing if there are trends in growth or decline, if there are any new revenue sources, and also looking at drivers of our revenues. This informs the next 2025 to 2030 outlook, which will be finalized in August. Each of these processes identified has either been completed or is underway as we develop the 2025 CSL. It's important to remember that this development is where we are as of today, and there are several other processes in queue as we develop the 2025 recommended budget. I will now discuss the CSL expense budget in more detail. So over the next few slides, I'll be diving into a snapshot of the current service level expense budget for 2025, as well as the plan for 2026. While this is just one side of the budget, it's prudent to understand the current cost of the 2024 budget before turning to how to fund those expenses. Most of this slide is focused on the general fund, as that is where a majority of our programs are budgeted. It's heavily supported by property taxes, and is where the mayor and city council make strategic decisions to get us to an adopted budget in December. It's important to note here that this is the cost of last year's budget today. This does not include any new spending or bringing grant-funded programs, which are temporary in nature, into ongoing funding within the general fund. Across all city funds, the budget team identified and removed $43.3 million of one-time or expiring programs. This is inclusive of one-time funding adopted for 2024, as well as other components of the budget that are expiring this year. That removal was in line with the 5-year plan included in the 2024 budget. So it can really be seen more as a technical necessity towards building the budget and not additional savings towards balancing. Collectively, salary, overtime, other pays, and fringe increased $24 million when based on the 2024 adopted budget. Internal service charges at the same time increased $9.1 million. As you can see in this visualization, when comparing the 24 adopted to the 2025 CSL, increases in salaries and other pays and fringe were smoothed out by reductions in contractual services primarily related to those one-time items being removed. The use of one-time programs is one way to keep the budget flexible. When we free up that capacity after a year, we can be more responsive to innovative ideas and pilots as they become presented. As previously mentioned, while policy allows for cost escalation within 2 of the 3 expense categories, the base does not receive that treatment. The base in most cases is held flat year to year to ensure that the executive and legislative bodies receive requests to increase a department's discretionary budget and can equitably consider those amongst all other requests. This portion of the budget, as mentioned, includes things like training, travel, and operating supplies. If a department wants to increase that base budget, whether it be to cover existing programs or expand, they must submit a new budget proposal to do so. This guideline is called out in Financial Policy 1.5.1. Next, I'll dive into some trends that we are seeing within 2 of those buckets. So starting here with personnel, with over 4,000 FTEs budgeted for the city, personnel is a significant portion of total city operating costs. We work closely with our partners in human resources and other departments to complete our annual review of personnel expenses in accordance with our financial policies, finalizing budgeted full-time equivalent accounts and salary and fringe for each position. The goal here is to develop a comprehensive position-by-position workforce plan for the city. Salary and fringe expenses have both increased in the 2025 CSL over what was included in the 24 adopted budget. Growth in salaries is outpacing growth in fringe, and this is driven by collective bargaining agreements being settled at salary increases higher than what has been historically negotiated. These agreements impact both steps and cost of living adjustments for positions represented by each bargaining unit. The budget division plans for annual increases in personnel costs based on growth assumptions that we revisit annually in collaboration with human resources. The 2025 CSL general fund budget for the account codes shown on this slide is about $23 million higher than planned, though after accounting for budget planning from 2024 and other offsets that have been identified, That variance is reduced to $10 million. Again, this is a reflection of larger than budgeted cost of living adjustments negotiated in contracts that have been settled between our 2024 workforce plan update and this one that we are now adjusting the 2025 to reflect. As more collective bargaining agreements are settled under the leadership of the HR Labor Relations Division, we'll continue to account for the associated growth in the personnel portion of the CSL. As a final note on personnel, I wanted to take a step back and address what appears to be a significant increase in costs between the 2023 actuals and the 2024 adopted budget. This is primarily due to differences between the accounts where we budget salary and fringe and the accounts where they're ultimately paid out of. This graph only shows the accounts where we budget a subset of those personnel accounts, which would exclude some components of actual personnel spending. So moving on to internal service charges. Internal service departments and funds are those that provide goods and services to other departments within the enterprise, primarily IT, Public Works Fleet Division, Property Services, and the workers' compensation and liability components of self-insurance. These departments first estimate their expenses to carry out their work for the coming year, and then allocate them out to customer departments as determined by each internal service department's allocation model. Costs and cost distributions are determined using considerations such as a customer department's full-time equivalent accounts, information on historical actuals, identified department-specific projects and needs, and for workers' comp and liability, a report from our actuarial consultant, Pinnacle. The graph here shows charges specifically to general fund departments. Changes in internal service charges to the general fund between the 24 adopted budget and the 2025 CSL are the result of a few primary drivers. First, fleet charges are increasing primarily because the cost of vehicles have increased dramatically over the past few years. Public Works Fleet Division attempts to collect enough internal service charges to spread the impact of planned vehicle replacements over many years, but the scale is such that it can still have large annual impacts. Rent charges are increasing due in part to a redesign of the rent model in 2025 planning. The Property Services rent model was redesigned this year to improve cost recovery for the comprehensive facilities work that Property Services does. The other major component of the rent charge increase is changes in maintenance and custodial costs due to the fluctuation of occupancy rates in various city buildings and buildings coming in and offline. Workers' compensation charges are increasing based on the annual third-party actuarial report projecting claims the city will pay out in future years based on past year's actuals. Workers' compensation charges were adjusted upward to reflect the projected increase in 2025 claims paid from that report. Finally, IT charges are decreasing due to a planned out-year decrease in the HR Information System Phase 2 project, which was a new budget proposal approved in the 2023 adopted budget, funding for which ends in the current year. I also wanted to note that changes in personnel costs also have an effect on internal service charges because the personnel costs of each internal service department are allocated through their respective models. As I discussed on the previous slide, collective bargaining agreements are being settled at increases higher than what was historically negotiated. As personnel costs in the IT, Fleet Division, and Property Services and Risk Management divisions of finance, as those increase, their internal service charges have to increase as well to recover those costs. After all of these cost drivers are taken into account, internal service charges to the general fund are increasing by a net of about $9.1 million. General fund departments are provided with the budget to pay for their charges each year, so changes to those charges have no operational impacts to the departments. And with that, I will pass it back to Jane to go over our revenues.
Okay, so to this point in the presentation, we've focused on the city's CSL expenses, and now we're going to transition into how we're paying for all those costs. Again, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the general fund since that's where decision-making really happens. And as noted earlier, revenue forecasts are developed in collaboration with dozens of people throughout the city. We rely on the subject matter experts in each department to help inform these forecasts. So this is a view of all funds revenues. So it includes the general fund, special revenue funds, debt funds, et cetera. Some of these are still under development just by virtue of data availability at this time of the year. All of those revenues will be finalized in June and July, so well in time for budget release in August. One thing worth highlighting on this slide is that the primary driver of that steep drop-off that you see from 22 and 23 into 24 is ARPA revenues declining. The slide before you now is specifically focused on the general fund. So before we get into a discussion of general fund revenues that come from outside the city, like taxes and state aid, we think it's important to highlight how those transfers into the general fund are used to stabilize general fund activities. So while any given year there may be a few different transfers into the general fund, this slide is oriented around each year's primary transfer. So those are the boxes highlighted at the bottom there. So prior to the pandemic, the primary transfer for the city's general fund was $32 million approximately from downtown assets fund into the general fund. Of course, that fund was hit particularly hard by COVID. Transfers dipped as low as $11 million annually to allow that downtown assets fund to recover. From 2022 to 24, you can see that ARPA was that primary transfer. So we used ARPA to stabilize those general fund activities. And then going forward, ARPA is no more in 25 and 26. So we're back to the downtown assets being the primary transfer. And the plan is to return to that pre-COVID transfer amount of about $32 million. So the net impact of the ARPA reduction and the downtown assets increase is a drop in transfers to the general fund by about 45%. So we're going from $60 million of support for the general fund in 2024 to $33 million in 2025. So before moving on to general fund revenues, we'll get to a brief slide on the local options sales taxes, which is that primary revenue source for the downtown assets fund. So we want to take some time to unpack that since it is that primary support, transfer support for the general fund moving forward. So the visual here shows the net local option sales tax or lost revenues. Generally speaking, it's easier to talk about the gross amount because of it's a more apples to apples comparison. In the past several years, there have been some major changes in what is withheld annually from the lost revenue. So things like the U.S. Bank Stadium debt, as well as the Minnesota Department of Revenue admin costs are held out of that. So in terms of gross revenues in this area, we have well surpassed, as of 2023, our pre-pandemic revenues. So in 2018, we were at $92 million in this revenue source, and we hit $100 million in 2023. The low point during the pandemic was $51 million in this area. So we are forecasting 3.5% growth for 2025, which is about $3.2 million of additional net revenue.
Excuse me, Ms. DeSenza. I don't recall this slide from our preliminary agenda item, so I'm assuming it's an update. But did you just say that we went from $92 million in 2019 to $100 million in 2023? In terms of overall revenue. Now that's gross, not the net with the state collections. Is that correct?
President Brandt, yes, that's correct. That's the gross. So it was $92 million in 2018 and 2019, and then $100 million last year.
And do you know what that would be on a net basis last year?
I believe that was $77.6 million on a net basis.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move on. So this slide focuses on those general fund revenues. The prior slides showed you the importance of transfers into the general fund and the noteworthy revenues that supported those transfers. So we're back to the general fund here, excluding those transfers and use of cash. The focus here is external revenues. The outlook here for 2025 is slightly positive, 1% growth. And you can see in the visual that we're sort of expecting that to slow in future years. So this is a little different than the last 2 years. There was generally a more consistent outlook of these revenues increasing. This year we are seeing both some notable increases as well as some notable decreases that net out to that 1% growth. So the bolded items on the slide are sort of the major categories. So taxes are a notable increase, the larger revenue source. The notable decreasing revenue is the intergovernmental revenue. We'll have slides on both of those.
Ms. DeSenza, could I ask you a question? You're talking about 1% revenue growth for the general fund, but I believe much earlier in the presentation there was a minus 3.4% revenue for the general fund. Can you reconcile those for me, please?
Sure, President Brandt. So this is 1% growth for these specific revenue categories. So just when we're looking at the overall general fund, it's a different picture, but when we just look at these revenue sources, we're seeing that 1%. Okay. So also notable to call out on this slide, in the notable decreasing category, we have the non-business license and permit revenue. That is projected to be about a 12% decline or $4.2 million decrease from 24 to 25. This is a revenue source that is generated predominantly by CPED, but it also relates to regulatory services and public works. It's a revenue category that's driven by development activity in the city, and so we monitor the Planning Commission approvals as they can serve as a lead indicator for this revenue type. We have seen that the Planning Commission approvals for larger projects diminish significantly in 2023 and in the start of the current year. So accordingly, the outlook for that category is a substantive decline in those revenues in 2025.
And could I ask you if you have a sense of what factors are driving that decrease? For example, one could hypothesize any number. The potential for a rent control might inhibit somebody's desire to propose a project, but so might also the moratorium on implementation of the 2040 plan that was, of course, recently lifted by the legislature. Or is it the higher interest rates or all those things?
President Brandt, I think we've had internal discussions about 2040 and perhaps with that change that will improve this figure. I think the interest rates are also probably very notable here. Borrowing is just more expensive at this time than it was a few years ago. And I think that will conclude my speculation on that topic.
Thank you.
Okay. So taxes are, of course, the largest revenue stream in the general fund, and property taxes are the vast majority of that revenue category. Property taxes are about 55% of the overall general fund revenue and 90% of the tax revenue category. This slide shows us the progression of the adopted budget's 5-year financial direction. So without any changes to those percentages, 6.1% property tax levy in 25, and in 2026, 5.7. So that, of course, does not consider or cover any new budget proposals or that gap that we talked about at the very beginning of this presentation. You may notice that in the 2024 adopted budget column, there's a very small category at the base of that column. That was the newly established state local affordable housing aid. We forecasted at 6.2% for the current year budget. You'll notice that it's not in the 2025 and 26 columns, and that is due to conversations internally in finance, especially with the controller, about moving that revenue source to a special revenue fund given the specific restrictions around it. So the city will still receive that support, but it is also a state aid rather than a tax, given that it is based off of a formula from the state. Intergovernmental revenues are the second largest revenue stream in the general fund, and local government aid, the LGA, is a majority of this revenue category. It's about 12% of our general fund revenue and 80% of the general fund intergovernmental revenues that are reflected on this slide. So you'll notice the large drop-off from 2024 to 2025. That is largely because of the $19 million in public safety aid falling off of the visual. So we actually received that public safety aid at the very end of 2023. So it's shown in the 2023 actual column, but we budgeted it in 2024. So I believe it came in the last few days of 2023. We, of course, worked with our IGR team to forecast the LGA, and then, as we know, session ended without action on that item, so we had to hold LGA flat for our budgeting purposes. Okay, so tying this all together, we started today looking at those different expense category trends. We touched on the base budget, how we generally keep those costs level. After the expense slide discussion, we talked about the top revenue categories and how they relate to the total revenue budget. And this slide brings that information together to show you both the revenues and expenditures. This view is inclusive of plan transfers out and in. And of course, it shows that we are not coming in balanced in 2025 and beyond. So this chart shows those 2 years, prior years of actuals, the 24 adopted budget, which is balanced, and then the out years. So prior to any new spending decisions, we're currently looking at a $21.6 million gap in the general fund in 2025, and that increases to $38 million in 26, the supplemental year. So while we have had in prior years, due to CARES and ARPA, this influx of federal and state dollars that helped us balance, that is not coming our way in 2025, so there's nothing significant enough externally that will help us fill that gap in the short term. So as has been mentioned, 2022 and 23 saw us recovering early in our revenues from the pandemic, but that trend is sort of normalizing while expenses continue to climb. So particularly in the personnel area, the cost of hiring, the cost of retaining our workforce. This is certainly not unique to Minneapolis. Peer cities are projecting budget deficits in the hundreds of millions. And the objective of our office will now be to look at all possible levers within our collective control to maximize those revenues, prioritize our spending in alignment with city goals. In prior years, our CSL presentations, this picture was much closer to balancing. In the subsequent months, we were able to talk about creating capacity for new spending. This year, the focus is much more on closing this gap in order to reach a balanced budget. And so just briefly, I will wrap with a quick timeline here. So of course, as you know, we're here for the CSL presentation in May. June and July are when departments get a chance to present their existing and proposed budgets to the mayor, and there's a lot of decision-making that happens at that time. By August 15, the mayor will release his budgets, and then in September, we'll be back to set the maximum levy with this body and begin the budget overview and department budget presentations to Budget Committee. Public hearings will also start in the fall in time for council markup and budget adoption in December. And I'll pause there.
I have a question about a table I think was in our advanced material, but not in your presentation today, and that was the general fund property tax versus non-property tax revenue chart. For 2024, it had both sources over 50%, which seems mathematically impossible, and I just wondered if that's just a glitch.
It's a great question. Do you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
President Brandt, Commissioners. If you look on the left side and the right side of this graph, the right side is the percent share of property tax to all revenues within the general fund. So it's not that there's 50% of
I see.
property. Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation? for today.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to see if there are any questions among my colleagues. Well, good. I have a number. So I looked at this and looked at the headline in yesterday's paper and looked at it with that standpoint, and I realized this is current service levels, and it doesn't include whatever the council may, in its discretion, decide to do. But we're currently in a situation where we have $185 million net fund balance, I think, projected for the end of this year, versus $113 million that's required by the city's 17% budget reserve policy. And I'm certainly not reckless enough to suggest that we draw down to $113 million, but are there possibilities, or have you built into any of this an improvement on the $18 million that I believe was used to supplement the 2024 budget?
President Brandt, yes. The numbers we've shown today have some $14 million in use of cash already programmed for 2025. Use of cash is always a lever, especially for one-time expenses that we will revisit and bring forward. I'd also like to flag, so 17% is certainly the minimum balance required by our financial policies. In practice, we like to maintain a higher than bare minimum reserves, and that served us well, I believe, in conversations with rating agencies. I believe the controller was last in front of the budget committee for a quarter four financial overview for the previous year, and displayed a really helpful graphic that showed while we do have some fund balance, a lot of it is restricted. So, for example, that $19 million of public safety aid is contributing to that fund balance number, but is not something that can be used for other items.
Granted. So are you saying $14 million in 2025 is built on top of the $18 million that was used in 2024?
President Brandt, those uses of cash are generally just the one time. So I believe, yes, you're right. $18 million sounds right for the current year. And we planned for $14 million in the 25 budget already. So that number.
Excuse me, didn't mean to cut you off. When you say uses of cash, how does that differ from net fund balance, which is what I think of as the cushion against?
Sure, President Brandt, that might be a better question for the controller about the distinctions between fund balance and cash balance. It is, I've learned, more complicated than I thought. Often in budget, we're talking about cash balance.
Okay, I see. Yes, he does present generally his both on a fund balance basis and a cash basis. Mm-hmm. Turning then to the area of the sales and other local taxes, exclusive of property tax or the franchise fee. I believe in 2024, the contribution to the general fund was $23 million. It was, as you noted, as I looked up, $31 million before the pandemic, when those taxes yielded a total of $89.2 million, much of which was committed to Convention Center and Target Center and so on. Do you know what is built into the five-year financial direction for both the overall collection for 2025 and the use of that in the general fund?
President Brandt, I can speak to the use in the general fund. We are planning for that return to normal of $32 million for next year, and no further decisions have been made beyond that.
I see. So I guess the question is there is it possible to squeeze more of that out of the Downtown Assets Fund for the general fund? I mean, returning to 31 or 32 million in 2025 doesn't seem to recognize, for example, most of these are based on percentages of spending, and obviously we've had quite a bit of inflation since then. Now, I wouldn't argue that downtown is back to normal in terms of economic activity. On the other hand, we've had, I'm sure, a very good month on those local taxes because of the playoffs, and with luck, maybe it'll continue for another month. And although I would not balance a budget long term on the basis of that, in terms of, do you have any sense of what the boost has been over projections in the first, I guess it'd be now the second quarter, because of that economic activity, which is not only it's reflected in admissions taxes, lodging, restaurants, and so on, and general spending.
President Van, I know I'll look forward to seeing those quarter two numbers when they come in. I believe what we saw from quarter one so far was we did not see super robust activity in that area, and I know we're all delighted and surprised to see our hometown team in the playoffs. It certainly wasn't in our projections for downtown activity.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions by any other members of the board? All right. Thank you very much. And I'll ask the clerk to receive and file this report. I just would like to reserve a little space here at the end of the meeting for a couple housekeeping announcements. We'll start with...
Excuse me, President Brandt, there was one more item on the agenda.
Oh. Excuse me.
The bond transmittal, it's a receive and file item.
Thank you, Alan. I knew there was a reason you were sticking around after your presentation. Go right ahead.
President Brandt, we didn't actually plan a presentation for this. This is an item sent from council.
I see.
Just to be received and filed by the board.
All right. Well, we'll receive it and file it. Thank you, clerk, for saving my butt as usual. And Commissioner Priest-Stinson has a few words.
I'm going to make this quick. I know we're all ready to eat and move about the evening. One, I just want to make sure that we reinforce that we ask for pronouns when we do introductions from staff. I would hate to misgender someone, so I'd like to move to make that a practice like we've done land acknowledgement. And then I also just wanted to name public comment is only as powerful as the engagement behind soliciting it. So we can use communications, and we have to put out from the city that we're having a meeting, especially where bigger meetings for public comment. So I want to encourage engagement from everyone on this board to get people to show up for public comment, because we did change the bylaws when we were first elected 3 years ago to add that we can have public comment at every single meeting and not just at the charter required. And then third is an offer to, as vice president, who really only has a role when Mr. President can't be present, to track the I'll get back to yous while we don't have a staffer. We often don't circle back, and I think there's been a few instances where we don't get what we need, and it's not to the fault of anyone. It's just a lot of information. So I'm offering that I can track the I'll get back to yous to make sure that we're actually getting things back when it's not available or is just beyond the what's in the presentation. And then the last piece is, I think we all got the city email about commemoration is a strange word, but to say a few words about George Floyd. And so I'd be remiss if we didn't say anything in this particular body, especially as a black woman. So I'd like to just take a moment to share a reflection that I wrote today. And I started my day with reflection and in prayer for our city and for Mr. Floyd and for his family. I couldn't attend any remembrances here at the city, so I wanted to share these thoughts that are really rooted in fact and humanity, which was George Floyd was something to somebody. And if nobody else, the creator. No one is put here as a mistake. We live a life, and we have a right to live through our mistakes, make them right, and live to tell about it. He didn't get what he had coming to him. He was never on trial. But for those who killed him and allowed for the torture and murder to happen were. Many lives have been lost to violence from all sources in our city and around the globe, and not every family and loved one who gets called home gets justice. All Lives Matter is actually an admission that Black Lives Matter. It isn't simply an organization, it is a call to action, just like a land acknowledgement, to make sure that we treat Black lives with the same care, dignity, respect, and honor as others are afforded. And it is a call to spend your privilege if you have it. It is a commitment and it is a reminder. I have the honor of working in George Floyd Square as well as serving the city in my elected capacity. The honor to represent people, all people, especially those whose voices go unheard and those whose needs that go unmet, while walking around this city sometimes feeling invisible. Today is a day to uplift the people and commit to dismantling systems of harm that were put in place to relegate us to a form of existence that was never meant to ensure equity, equality, and the ability to thrive while having our most basic needs met. I hope that everyone reflects today and every day on what have you been doing since the atrocity? What has changed for you? And what is your self-interest to a just society, specifically for us while serving our city? Mr. Floyd and so many others are not here today in body, but they are here in spirit, and they call for the fire in our heart to stay lit for justice and for love. All power to the people, always the caretakers of this planet, for without us, Earth is just a spinning globe with no purpose. Let's govern together in purpose. Thank you for allowing that time.
Thank you, Commissioner Priest-Stinson, for your well-chosen words. Just a couple of housekeeping things. We discussed at the last meeting when to have the MPHA here, and Director Warsame has agreed to present to us on July 24th as the date that worked for most of us. I will be out of state and out of cell phone range for much of the next 2 weeks. There will be times when I'll be able to get access, and I will respond to any emails and questions during that period, but I ask your forbearance on the time that it'll take me to get back to you. And because I'm not sure if I'll have cell phone access during the next agenda setting session, I've asked Vice President Priest-Stinson to sub for me at that meeting. I may be able to call in if I'm in the right place at the right time, but in any event, those are the announcements I had. Anyone else?
Just that I'm happy to respond to anything that's needed to be responded to. If someone should copy me, I feel able to do that so that you don't have the pressure of having to do that. Time off is time off.
Thank you. Seeing no further business to come before the board, our meeting is adjourned.